Hello and welcome. This is actually, to be totally honest, the second time I've gone through this, but our stream cut out while we were modeling, and I'm just going to start again. This is the third installment in our little Through-Tenon and curve-inspired classes for today, and we're going to get started by modeling this coffee table based on an idea that one of our subscribers and students talked to us about, and we are going to start modeling on the front. We'll create a center point rectangle and just drag it out. Click on the dimension tool and click that the top dimension is going to be 42 inches. We're going to make the table exactly 14 inches tall, and that gives us a nice dimension for a coffee table. If I double click on it and hit X, that will change these to be guidelines, so they're not the actual outsides of the table itself. I will click on the center point rectangle, and I will create one and another rectangle, one for the legs and one for the top. We're going to model one leg, and then we're going to copy it across after we do the joinery. Now, we're going to need some mirroring lines, a mirror line through one and the other so that we know we get things exactly in the center. I will change each of those to guidelines by hitting X. And we are going to make these the exact width. So I will click on this outside line and say it matches up with this outside line. And I will make the inside center on the center line here. I am going to do the same thing with the inside center of that. And I will take the outside line and make it collinear with the outside. So now we have exactly those pieces. The only thing I need to do now is tell it how far in and how far over each piece is going to be. So I will dimension from the top that it is going to be exactly 1/4 of an inch down. I'm going to tell it that the inside leg is going to be 7 inches in. I will tell it that the leg is going to be 13/16, and that the top is going to be 15/16. And I think that's going to work out quite nicely. No, we'll make them equal. We'll make them equal, and it will make our modeling a bit simpler. You can always change them back after if you like, but I think it'll make it easier to understand. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Finish Sketch, and I am going to go out here and extrude the top. Pick the 3 pieces of the top, say New Component. I'm going to make it symmetrical, and the top is going to be 14 inches wide, so that's 7 inches in each direction, and hit OK. To avoid any confusion, we'll rename it to be Top, turn our sketch back on, hide the top, and we're going to make our leg. We'll pick the 3 pieces of our leg, say New Component, and we are going to actually make this leg wider than our top. So we're going to start from one side. We're going to go to the other side by selecting To Object and picking it, but we're going to make it 1 inch wider by changing our offsets to be 1 inch. Our new component, and hit OK. And we will rename that to be legs. When we turn off our sketch, we now see that we have one piece going directly through the other piece. Now, I think that's an interesting look, and we could actually just cut a hole, and that would be a neat way of mounting the table. But we're going to make something that is a little more intricate and involved here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some tenons. So I will click, and I will start modeling on the top of our leg. Now, I want these tenons to start in the center, and that means I need to find the center line. So I will draw a line from the top to the bottom. This little triangle means the midpoint, and if I click on the line and hit X, it becomes the center. So I'm going to say I will draw a center square. It's going to be a center rectangle first, but then I hit equals, and if I hit the equals sign and click on both, now that it is linked into the sides, it already knows that it is going to be exactly the size of the piece. And I want a bunch of these to be evenly spaced so that I get through-tenons in that piece. So if I go in here and I say create rectangular pattern, and I pick this center rectangle, all four sides by double clicking, and I pick as a direction that I want it to go in this direction. I want it to go in both directions. So we will say symmetric, and we are going to create quantity 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to make the spacing slightly less, 1 and 5/8. Still not quite big enough. Let's change this to 1 and 7/8. We're going to flip up and look at this on the top so you can see where the spacing is going to be. 1 and 7/8 is looking just about right. You can always do this by eye, come back and change it later, but I think 1 and 7/8 is good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say finish sketch. No, wait a second, I need one more line. I am going to hit P for project, and I'm going to project the outside line of the top onto it. Projecting just copies a dimension and a line from some other drawing. So we have the edges, we also now have the outside lines. If I say finish sketch, I should be able to click on this extrude button here. I will turn off the top, and I'm going to pick all the spaces where we don't want a tenon to be, which is here. I will say to object, turn on our top, find the bottom, and turn the top back off. When you're cutting holes, you really only want to have the thing visible you're cutting the holes into, because it can get really confusing. You can pick them manually in objects to cut down here, but it's easier just to turn them off and they won't be cut. So we now have a bunch of through-tenons, square through-tenons, which is a very classic Japanese look. So if we turn the top on, we can see these through-tenons, but we don't have actual holes for them. I think they come up a little high, but we can fix that in a second. So if I click on this combine tool and I cut the top, see, cut with the bottom, with the leg, and hit OK, I can now turn off the leg and I have holes going all the way through the top. Now I think that's an interesting look, but I think it's too far. I think some people will like it and other people will not, but I do not. So we'll edit the sketch, and I'm going to make them only proud by a 1/16 of an inch and hit finish sketch. And I think that's far, far more subtle, and I think that's more the look that we're going for here. Now what I want to do is I want to copy that same set of holes over to the other side. Now I could mirror this and cut another set of holes, but I'm going to show you a different technique because we've done that mirroring and cutting technique before quite a few times. So if I go in here to the first sketch, and you see the center line that we drew as a guide, I'm going to click on it and hit X, toggle it back to a regular center line. Now, I see where I extruded the top. I will right-click and hit Edit Feature, and I will turn off the right-hand side. Now, if instead of doing that, I mirror the body across the center line and tell it to join, it now is a mirror image, and the holes are exactly in the right place. If I again mirror a body across the center line, I can mirror the leg, and we now have the leg for our coffee table on the other side. Now the only other thing that we want to do here today is create a little brace for this. I think it is actually looking a little blocky, but we'll deal with that in a second. We'll see how it looks once we actually put in the block on the bottom. If we go back into our first sketch, what I'm going to do is add a typical Japanese style mid-century accent on the bottom. I'm going to draw an angle, and I'm going to draw another angle and a straight line. I will connect this in to the bottom piece by clicking across, drawing another angle up and over. Now I've only drawn the outside edge. I will hit dimension, and I will pick these two lines and tell it that it is going to be a 67-degree angle. I'm going to tell it that this other angle here is going to be exactly 115 degrees. I will scroll in and tell it that this angle is parallel to the outside angle, and that this foot is going to be 5 inches. I will tell it that the inside dimension is going to be 1.5 inches. That the inset will be 3/8 of an inch from the bottom. And if you do this, you can go in and drag the lines and see where they actually meet up, to see what can move. So I want the line here to end exactly 4 inches from the middle. And this piece here, this is telling us how far out the whole thing is. So I want the outside of our foot to be inside the middle of the table by 4 inches. And that will give us our nice little foot. So we can say finish sketch. If we turn off the top and the legs and turn on our first sketch again, I can go in and say I want to extrude this bottom piece. We will again make it symmetrical around the center, and we're going to make that exactly 5/8 of an inch thick. We'll create a new component and say OK. And we'll call this feet. What I'm going to do is turn the sketch off, tell it to mirror, and mirror that foot through the center. So it goes the whole way, and I will say join. So we have this nice classic mid-century foot that is going to brace the whole thing. If I turn the top and the legs back on, you can now see exactly what we have created here. And we have this nice little mid-century detail. Now, there are several ways that this can be accomplished, and they can look a little different. I think that that piece is a little small for the size of our table in terms of its height. So we will go back in, and I will show you just how easy it is to correct that. I think that we need to make this significantly taller. I think we will double that up and make it 3 3/8 inch tall. We will hit Finish Sketch, and now we have a much, much blockier brace. That might be a little big, so again, we will go in and through the magic of trial and error, we will call this 2 5/8, and that should work out to be just right. We'll call this Goldilocks modeling. And I think that works out to be quite a nice little accent piece for the table. I think the table itself is a little blocky, and I think it should be longer for what we are doing. Of course, that will somewhat depend on the dimensions of your room, but we're going to call this 52 inches long, and hit OK. And now I think it looks much, much more like the style of table that we were aiming for. On the inside, I think we have made a slight error in terms of having that sketch actually angled. I don't like the angle, so I'm going to change that. And even after modeling those pieces, I can go in here and I can draw this as just a straight line. I am going to tell it that that line is exactly 2 5/8 inches up from the bottom, and hit Finish Sketch. And now you can see I have totally reshaped that piece, but it has still kept it in the model exactly as it needed to be. So there we have it. We have a nice little coffee table, which I think works out quite well. The only thing that we might need is a second brace. So let's go in and take a look at that. We're going to say Edit Sketch. While I'm at it, I'm going to change this to be 78 degrees because I think it will match up more nicely. I am going to draw again. Up here, I will draw the same shape, down and over. We don't need to make this little cutout because this is going to be a brace piece. I am going to change the dimension, so this is exactly 1 inch down. I am going to make this angle that angle. I'm going to draw the angle in the right direction so that I can copy it. I'm going to make this angle from this line to this line the same as this angle here. And I will tell it that from the outside to that piece is going to be 3 inches. And I will say Finish Sketch. Now, if I turn those 3 off again, turn on our sketch, and extrude. We've done this before. And I'm going to extrude that exactly 1/2 inch in both directions. New component. We'll call this brace. We'll turn off our sketch and mirror it across the center line. Hit OK. And we'll turn on our other pieces. And we now have a nicely braced coffee table component. Now, of course, we need to cut some of these pieces out. We are going to just use basic holes. We could do some half laps on these. For the top one, I will show you how to do it the basic way. Combine, left piece and brace. OK. We will repeat, right piece and brace. OK. Now on the bottom one, I think what I'm going to do is cut in some half laps. So I want to be able to cut half this into these legs. So what we will do is we will cut a hole into the leg that is half the height of this. So if I do a new sketch on the side of this leg, I hit P for project, copy the end, and hit OK. I can now click and draw a line directly through from one midpoint to the other, and I have now divided this in half. What I want to do is hit Finish Sketch. I will turn off the brace and the feet, and I am going to click Extrude this bottom half to the outside of the other leg. To Object, outside of the other leg, and hit OK. I have now cut the bottom half of my half lap. If I turn back on the feet, and I cut the foot with the 2 sides, if I now turn off those legs, I have now cut the bottom half of my half lap. So those will now slot in exactly the way I expect them to. And I think that works out quite well. All you have to do now is make sure you get those in place. You wouldn't have to use any other bracing to get that top in line. It will just sit there. You could put some dowels in, but realistically gluing it to those legs is going to be perfectly fine. People are going to ask things about wood movement, but because the grain of the top and the grain of the sides is all going to be running in the same direction, that works out to be fine. You'll see in these models, though, it is not. So if you want to model it and be accurate, we will right-click on one and say Texture Map Controls, and rotate it so the grain direction is straight up and down. I'll go over to the other one, and for the sake of making appearances look good, which might be useful if you were going to show this to your client before building it, we will change our grain direction. So when you build it, they are going to be not like a waterfall table, but is the right idea. Now these pieces, the grain is running along the piece, and yes, that will be cross-grain connection there, but you don't need to worry about it because that piece is so small, it is not really going to have any seasonal movement. But all the seasonal movement we have here is going to be going across the grain in the same direction, so the piece will not crack apart. I think that looks quite good. There is one other change that we could make to make this feel slightly more modern. If we hit A for appearance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this modeled in maple and walnut. We already have it modeled in maple, but if I was going to add a few walnut accents, I could add a walnut accent, whoops, not to the brace. I want the whole thing to be maple, glossy maple. We will remove any changes that are made to the maple. And I am going to make the top and the legs from walnut, and hit OK. And now we have maple accents and a beautiful mid-century true modern coffee table. Could also work as a bench. Either way would be fine. It would be great for either. And in case you're curious why we were doing this today, there was a student who was asking about modeling this for their house. They have all sort of mid-century Japanese style combined, like fusion furniture, and they wanted to see just how to create a basic model for this kind of thing. Now, I don't know exactly the dimensions that they have for their room, but they could easily take this model, and if any of you want copies of the models that we are doing in these classes, just feel free to ask and I will happily provide them for you. Now, I think that worked out quite well. There is one other thing that we could do, which is quite common in mid-century in terms of aesthetics. Often we will take things like the three-dimensional walnut and make the top darker than the legs. So the legs come through and they are a slightly different color. We're going to apply a different stain. If we right-click and hit duplicate, we're going to apply this other stain to the legs. Now it's the same at the moment, but we are going to make the legs slightly darker by changing the color. We will make it slightly darker, and we will make the grain pop a little more in those pieces. So if we close this, we can now see that we have two different stains. And we have a dark stain and a light stain going through for these pieces. We will make it slightly more subtle by using the darker of these two stains on our feet and the lighter of these two stains on our brace. And now the whole thing is in walnut with a stain, and it is a very, very subtle piece with some nice details of these through-tenons that you wouldn't necessarily see until you got quite up close to it. I think that's quite nice. So that is the third of our live streams for this section. We started off with a monitor stand that was organic and curved. We then went on to a monitor stand that had through proud dovetails, which inspired this design here with the through Japanese style square tenons. I'd like to thank you for watching with us today. If you have any questions, you can feel free to put those in the comments below. And beyond that, it is easy enough for us to take this model and share it with you. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you have any questions. I am going to be traveling in the near future, and I won't be able to connect to the internet to share live streams. So what I want to do is I want to save up a few of these, and I will be posting these after I arrive so you can follow them along. So, like I said, thank you for joining us today, and have a great day in the shop. This has been a live stream class, and we will save this so you can copy it later. Have a great day. Bye-bye.